I never thought my own neighbor would turn my life into a nightmare, but the night my house burned to the ground, the firefighters told me something that made my stomach drop. This wasn't an accident. And the last person I expected, the HOA Karen who had been complaining about me for months, was suddenly everywhere that night. Watching, hovering, staring at the flames like she enjoyed them. But here's the part that still sends chills down my spine. A week later, she walked into the courthouse acting like nothing happened, unaware that the evidence stacked against her was about to expose every secret she'd been hiding. The HOA thought they could cover it up. Karen thought she could blame me. But what happened in that courtroom? That was the moment everything flipped, and the truth finally came out. I still remember the smell first. It wasn't smoke at the beginning. It was something sharper, something chemical. The kind of smell that makes your instincts wake up before your brain does. It was 2:14 a.m. when I shot out of bed, coughing. My phone was buzzing on the nightstand, vibrating non-stop. For a second, I thought it was an alarm or maybe one of those emergency alerts. But then I heard the pounding on my front door. A voice was shouting my name. "Mark, open the door. You need to get out." I stumbled out of bed, still half asleep. The air inside my room already felt warm. Too warm. Then I opened my bedroom door, and that's when everything hit me at once. A thick wave of black smoke rushed into my face. I dropped to my knees on instinct, remembering something from a fire safety video years ago. My heart was slamming against my ribs. Something was burning. Something close. "Mark, get out now." I recognized the voice. My neighbor, Tom. I crawled down the hallway, eyes burning, coughing so hard my chest hurt. I managed to get to the front door and pulled it open. Tom grabbed my arm immediately and pulled me outside. "Your house is on fire," he said, breathless. I turned around, and my stomach just dropped. The entire left side of my house was bright orange. Flames were climbing up the siding like they were alive, eating their way upward, lighting up the entire street. I froze. It didn't feel real. This was my home. I had built so many memories here. And now it was being swallowed whole right in front of me. Tom's wife came running with a blanket, wrapping it around me. But I barely felt it. People were gathering outside, neighbors stepping onto their porches, whispering, pointing, calling 911. And then, I saw her. Karen. HOA Karen. The woman who spent the last 6 months trying to make my life miserable. And she wasn't shocked. She wasn't scared. She wasn't even pretending to be concerned. She was watching. Standing across the street, arms crossed, eyes fixed on my house burning like she was observing something she already knew was going to happen. The street lights caught her expression just enough for me to see it clearly. She looked satisfied. A cold chill went through me, colder than the night air. But all I could do was stare as the fire spread faster and faster. The fire department arrived within minutes, but by then the flames were too strong. Firefighters rushed around with hoses, shouting instructions, scanning the structure. One of them ran toward me. He had soot on his helmet, his voice urgent. "Sir, did you smell gasoline earlier?" "What?" I asked, confused. "We're detecting accelerants," he said. "This doesn't look like a normal electrical fire. We'll know more once we get inside, but it's suspicious." Suspicious. The word hit me like a punch. I looked back across the street. Karen was still standing there. Still not moving. Still watching like she was waiting for something. And suddenly every argument, every complaint, every warning letter flashed through my mind. It all started months earlier. 6 months before the fire when I first moved into the neighborhood, things were quiet. Peaceful. The kind of place where people waved at each other while mowing the lawn and kids rode their bikes until sunset. Then I joined the HOA. Not by choice. The house came with mandatory membership. Still, I thought it wouldn't be a problem. I was wrong. The HOA president, Karen Miller, introduced herself within minutes of me unloading the moving truck. She had a fake smile plastered on her face and a clipboard already in her hand. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said. "Just letting you know, we have rules. Very strict rules. And I enforce them." I remember laughing awkwardly. I thought she was joking. But she wasn't. The first issue came 2 weeks later. I received a violation notice because my garage door stayed open for more than 7 minutes. 7 minutes. I didn't even know someone was timing me. Next came the letter about my trash bins being visible from the street. Then the one complaining about the height of my grass, even though I had mowed it the day before. Every week, she found something. My neighbors even warned me. "Don't take it personally," Tom said once. "Karen fights with everyone. Power trip. She thinks she owns the whole neighborhood." But with me, it felt different. She seemed focused. Like she wanted me gone. The worst argument we had was about a small storage shed I put in my backyard. It wasn't visible from the street, it followed the guidelines, and I even submitted an approval form. She denied it. Twice. When I asked her why, her answer was cold and simple: "I don't like the look of it." I appealed the decision. The HOA board sided with me. They overruled her. That moment, I swear I saw something snap inside her. She glared at me like I had destroyed something precious to her. Like I had embarrassed her. And from that day on, everything changed. She doubled the violation letters. She took pictures of me every time I stepped outside. She reported my car for parking too confidently near the sidewalk. She even tried to fine me for leaving my porch light on too late. I thought it was harassment, but it felt petty, annoying, borderline creepy. But never, not once, did I imagine she was capable of something far darker. Not until the night of the fire. Back to the night of the fire, the flames finally began to die down as the firefighters pushed deeper inside. The roof collapsed on the left side with a crack so loud everyone on the street jumped. I just stared at the destruction. My home, the place where I kept every photo, every memory, every part of my life, was disappearing. One firefighter came over and crouched next to me. "We'll need to talk to you once we finish our sweep," he said gently. "There are signs this was set intentionally." Intentionally. The word echoed in my head again and again. I looked at Karen one more time. She wasn't looking at my house anymore. She was looking at me. And she was smiling. Not a big smile. Just a small, tight, satisfied smirk. Like she had won. Like she had finally gotten rid of me. But she didn't know something. Standing behind me, one of the firefighters was holding a melted red gas can they found near the fence line. And on it, there was a partial fingerprint. I didn't know it yet. But that print belonged to her. And it would lead us straight into the courtroom where every secret she tried to hide would be exposed. I don't think I slept at all that night. The fire trucks left around 5 a.m., leaving behind charred beams, soaked ashes, and the skeleton of what used to be my home. Everything smelled like smoke and chemicals. The air felt heavy, almost greasy. Tom refused to let me stay alone. He insisted I sleep at their house, but sleep wasn't happening. My mind was a storm, replaying the flames, the firefighters' words, and especially the look on Karen's face. That small smirk. It felt burned into my memory worse than the fire itself. I sat on Tom's couch, staring into nothing, until there was a knock on the door around 9 a.m. Tom opened it. A firefighter and 2 investigators stepped in. "Morning," the lead investigator said. "We need to ask a few questions about the fire." I nodded, my throat tightening. He sat across from me, opened a file, and said very calmly, "Based on early indicators, we are treating this as arson." I felt my hands go cold. Tom looked shocked. His wife gasped softly. But me. I wasn't surprised. The moment they said accelerants, I knew something wasn't right. "Do you have any suspects?" I asked carefully. The investigator exchanged a glance with the firefighter beside him. "We can't name anyone yet," he said. "But we found a red gas can at the fence line behind your house. It had residue matching the accelerant used." My chest tightened. I leaned forward. "Was there anything else on it?" He nodded slowly. "A partial fingerprint." My stomach flipped. I already knew who I wanted it to belong to. But wanting and proving are two different things. "I need to ask," the investigator continued, "do you have any issues with anyone in the neighborhood? Any conflicts? Arguments? Anyone who might want to harm you or vandalize your property?" Tom cleared his throat. His eyes flicked toward me. I didn't want to sound paranoid. I didn't want to accuse someone without evidence. But I couldn't avoid it either. "There's someone," I said quietly. "The HOA president, Karen Miller. We've had a lot of conflict lately." The investigator didn't react. Not even a raised eyebrow. He simply wrote her name down. "What kind of conflict?" I explained everything: the violation letters, the shed argument, the constant surveillance, her confrontations. Tom and his wife backed me up, adding details I didn't even know they'd noticed. The investigator listened carefully. "Has she ever threatened you?" he asked. "Not directly," I said. "But she said something once, after I won the shed appeal. She told me I would regret challenging her authority." That made him pause. "That exact wording?" he asked. I nodded. He wrote it down slowly, pressing the pen harder into the paper. "We will speak to her," he said. "But until then, please stay somewhere safe. Arsonists sometimes return to the scene." That sent a chill down my spine. Someone who starts a fire might want to finish what they started. The investigators left. Tom closed the door, and his face hardened. "That woman is trouble," he said. "I've been telling you. If anyone would pull something like this, it's her." I didn't answer, because part of me still couldn't believe it. Setting my house on fire? That's not petty. That's not HOA drama. That's evil. And yet, the picture in my mind, the smirk on her face that night, it wouldn't go away. The HOA's reaction around noon: the HOA sent a mass email to the neighborhood. Subject: incident last night. I opened it on my phone, half numb, half angry. It read, "Last night, a fire occurred at Mark's residence. While we are saddened by the loss, please be aware that the HOA had repeatedly warned him about property risks. We hope this serves as a reminder that safety compliance is essential." That was it. No sympathy. No concern. Just a subtle blame. Like the fire was my fault. Like the warning letters somehow justified the fact that my house burned down. Tom read the email over my shoulder. "Oh, that's Karen for sure," he said. "She wrote that herself." I knew he was right. The tone was unmistakable, passive-aggressive, dismissive, condescending. And blaming me for the fire? That was disgusting. I replied directly to Karen, "The fire department is investigating this as arson. Please refrain from implying negligence." She responded within 5 minutes, "I'm simply stating facts. If you kept your property compliant, none of this would have happened." I stared at her message in disbelief. My house burned down. I lost everything. And she was doubling down. Tom put a hand on my shoulder. "Forward that to the investigator," he said. "All of it." I did. The first interview with Karen the next day, the investigator called me. "We spoke with Karen Miller this morning," he said. "She claims you and she have never had serious conflict and that all interactions were strictly professional." I almost laughed. "She said that?" "Yes. She said she barely knows you." My jaw tightened. "That's a lie," I said. "She's been harassing me for months." "We've gathered that from multiple neighbors as well," he said. "Which is why her statement raised red flags." "She also denied ever coming near your backyard," he continued. or owning any gas cans. Did you tell her about the fingerprint? I asked. No, he said. Not yet. That was good. If she didn't know, she couldn't adjust her story. The investigator paused, then said something that made my stomach twist. She asked to speak with a lawyer within 10 minutes of the interview starting. People ask for lawyers when they're scared. Or hiding something. Did she seem nervous? I asked. He hesitated. She seemed angry, he said. Angry that we were questioning her at all. That sounded exactly like her. Then he said, she also mentioned that your shed posed a fire hazard and suggested, maybe your own carelessness caused the incident. I clenched my fists. She said that. She really said that. But the investigator wasn't finished. We also spoke with 2 other board members. Both admitted Karen was furious after losing the shed appeal. One board member says she told them, quote, "I'll make sure he doesn't stay here long." That hit me hard. It was no longer paranoia. No longer imagination. Now it was documented. Witnessed. Recorded. We weren't dealing with a petty HOA president anymore. We were dealing with someone dangerous. The evidence builds over the next week. The investigation moved fast. They analyzed the gas can. They found traces of Karen's fingerprint and a second partial print belonging to an unknown individual. They checked neighborhood cameras. Most homes didn't have good angles, but one camera across the street caught a blurry figure walking near my backyard around 1:48 a.m. The figure was wearing a hoodie, carrying something. The gait was familiar, even from a distance. It looked like her. The investigators kept quiet about the details, but one came by Tom's house a few days later to give an update. "We have enough to continue forward," he said. "But we're building a stronger case. Fires like this require solid proof." Tom asked the question I didn't want to ask. Is she going to be arrested? The investigator sighed. Not yet. But we're close. I looked out the window. Karen's house was directly across the street. And she was standing on her porch. Staring at Tom's house. Staring at me. Her eyes were cold, sharp, calculating. It was the same look she gave the night my house burned. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. She knew the investigation was closing in. She knew she was in trouble. And people like her, controlling, angry, obsessed with power, they don't react well when they start losing control. For most people, the days after a fire are about recovery. Insurance claims. Clothing donations. Finding a temporary place to stay. But for me, those days were something else. They were about watching a mask fall off. And Karen's mask was slipping faster than anyone expected. The neighborhood shifts the morning after the investigators interviewed her. Something changed in the neighborhood. You could feel it in the air. People suddenly stopped chatting with Karen. They stopped waving at her. They stopped walking up to her porch for casual talk. It was like everyone sensed the storm coming. Even her closest HOA allies, Linda from down the street and Mr. Howard from the corner lot, suddenly kept their distance. They weren't talking openly about it, but gossip spreads fast. People heard the investigators had been questioning neighbors. People heard they were looking into the HOA. And people heard Karen was their primary focus. I was standing outside Tom's house, staring at the remains of my home across the street, when Linda walked up quietly. She lowered her voice. "Mark. I'm so sorry." I didn't answer at first. I didn't owe her forgiveness. She had backed Karen up on almost every violation letter she sent me. She continued. I didn't know things had gotten this bad. Or that she was angry enough to do something like this. If I knew. She stopped herself. Because she realized something. She did know Karen was angry. Everyone knew. Everyone saw it. They just didn't think she would go that far. That moment told me something important. Even the HOA was starting to believe she did it. Karen comes to my door 2 nights later, around 8:30 p.m. There was a sharp knock at Tom's front door. Tom looked out the peephole and whispered, "It's her." My heart jumped. My palms went cold. "Don't open it," I said quietly. But Tom wasn't the type to hide from anyone. He cracked the door open slightly. Karen stood there, arms folded, jaw tight, the porch light hitting her face from below, making her look angrier, harsher. "Is Mark here?" she asked, her voice stiff. Tom didn't move. "Why?" She forced a smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "I want to offer condolences. His house burned down. It's the neighborly thing to do." Tom kept his hand on the door, blocking her view. "He's resting," Tom said. "You can say whatever you need to say through me." She rolled her eyes. "Fine. Tell him. I'm sorry for the loss. And he should be very careful about making accusations. Lies have consequences." I stepped into the hallway where she couldn't see me, but I could hear every word through the crack in the door. "I didn't make any accusations," I called out. "The investigators came to you, not me." There was silence. Then her voice, sharper now, "You're trying to ruin my reputation." "Your reputation?" "My house burned down," I said. "And you're worried about your image?" She snapped, "I haven't done anything. And if the HOA finds out you're spreading rumors, Karen." I stepped closer. "The fire department found accelerants. They found a gas can. They found fingerprints." The hinge of the door creaked as Tom opened it slightly wider, enough for her to see me now. She didn't blink. Her expression didn't soften. Instead, she said, "You're making a mistake." But it wasn't a threat. It was a warning. A cold, calculated warning. Tom closed the door in her face before she said anything else. I heard her heels clack hard as she marched away, each step louder than the last. When she reached her porch, she turned around and looked straight at us through the small window. Even from across the street, I could feel the anger radiating off her. And something else. Fear. The HOA meeting that backfired 3 days later, the HOA held an emergency meeting. I didn't want to go, but Tom insisted. "You need to hear what she says," he told me. So we went. The community center was full, packed with residents whispering, phones out, eyebrows raised. People were waiting for drama. People were waiting for answers. Karen stood at the front of the room, arms crossed, lips pressed tight, trying to look confident. But her hands trembled slightly. And everyone noticed. She spoke first. "As you all know, there was a fire at Mark's home. While investigators have not officially concluded anything, some individuals," she looked directly at me, "have been spreading dangerous rumors." The audience murmured. Tom whispered, "She's digging her own grave." Karen continued, "I would never harm anyone's property. And I certainly have no reason to hurt Mark. Any claims otherwise are false." A woman in the back raised her hand. "What about the fingerprint they found?" she asked loudly. Karen froze. Just for a second. "But enough. That is misinformation," she snapped. "Is it?" another neighbor asked. "Because the investigator came to our house this morning. They asked when we last saw you the night of the fire." More murmurs. People exchanged uncomfortable looks. Then Mr. Howard, one of Karen's usual supporters, stood up slowly. "Karen, did you tell them you weren't near Mark's backyard that night?" She stiffened. "Of course I did. Why wouldn't I?" He sighed. "Because my Ring camera caught someone walking behind Mark's house at 1:48 a.m. The footage is blurry, but the height and build look like you." The entire room went silent. Dead silent. Karen's face turned red, not with embarrassment, but with rage. She slammed her hand on the podium. "That footage means nothing. Anyone could have walked there." Mr. Howard didn't back down. "And that said everything." Even her board members were turning on her. "It's been sent to the investigators," he added. Karen's voice cracked. "You're all against me. This is a witch hunt." Then she pointed directly at me. "You did this. You're trying to destroy my life." But something inside me finally snapped. "No, Karen. You destroyed my home. And you almost destroyed me too." Her body tensed, like she wanted to attack. But she stopped herself. Because every eye in the room was on her. And every single one of them saw what I saw, a guilty woman losing control. The arrest 2 mornings later, around 7:30 a.m. Police cars lined up in front of Karen's house. Tom shook me awake. "You need to see this." I came out to the living room window just in time to watch officers walk up her driveway. Karen stepped outside wearing a robe, shouting at them before they even reached her porch. "This is ridiculous. I didn't do anything. Get off my property." I said get off. They read her the charges: suspicion of arson, reckless endangerment, malicious property destruction. Her screams echoed across the street as they handcuffed her. "You can't arrest me. I'm the HOA president." But authority didn't matter anymore. Her power didn't matter. Her title didn't matter. The truth was catching up. When they put her in the back of the patrol car, she turned her head and saw me standing near Tom. Her face twisted with hatred. Pure, burning hatred. "This isn't over," she mouthed through the window. But she was wrong. It was just beginning. Because the courtroom was waiting. And that was where every secret she tried to bury would be exposed in front of everyone. The weeks before the court hearing felt like living inside a pressure cooker. Even after Karen's arrest, nothing felt calm. Not for me. Not for the neighborhood. Not even for the police, who kept uncovering more things each week. And definitely not for Karen, who posted bail within 48 hours. The moment she came back home, the entire neighborhood changed. People shut their blinds when she walked by. Parents pulled their kids inside. Neighbors avoided eye contact. She wasn't just feared anymore. She was exposed. But she didn't act like someone who'd been caught. She walked around with her chin high, like she was the victim. She even went door to door one afternoon, trying to convince people that I framed her. Nobody believed her. Not after everything that came out. Still, the part that worried me most was simple. People this unhinged don't just accept defeat. They lash out. And I knew the courtroom was going to be the battlefield where she fought her hardest. The first day in court when the trial finally started, I sat in the front row next to Tom. My palms were sweating. My chest was tight. Just being in the same room as her felt like walking into a lion's cage. Karen sat with her attorney, wearing a navy blue suit and a look of complete confidence. Like she still believed nothing could touch her. The judge walked in. Everyone stood. The trial started. The prosecutor opened with a calm but powerful statement. "Today, we will show clear evidence that the defendant, Karen Miller, intentionally set fire to the home of her neighbor, Mark Davis, in an act of retaliation." Karen's attorney responded by calling the accusation absurd, unfounded, and a smear campaign invented by a disgruntled homeowner. It was all rehearsed. Her lawyer spoke like she was some sort of community hero. But then the evidence began. And her mask began to crack. The fingerprint, the first witness, was a forensic analyst, a serious man with glasses and a steady voice. He explained how the gas can was found, where it was located, what chemicals were detected, and why the pattern of burn damage clearly suggested arson. Then he dropped the first bomb. "We recovered a partial fingerprint," he said, pointing to the screen where a close-up image appeared. "It belonged to the defendant, Karen Miller." Karen's lawyer jumped up instantly. "Objection. There is no proof my client ever touched that gas can on that night. She owns gardening equipment. She participates in community projects. Her fingerprint could have transferred in hundreds of innocent ways." The judge glanced at the analyst. He nodded. "That is possible. But the fingerprint was found on the handle of the gas can, on top of soot that formed from the fire itself. It was a fresh print." Karen's head snapped toward her attorney. Her confidence faltered for the first time. The video footage next came Mr. Howard, the board member who showed the blurry ring footage at the HOA meeting. He walked up to the stand, nervous but determined. The prosecutor displayed the nighttime clip. A figure walking behind my backyard, carrying something heavy, wearing a hoodie. The prosecutor asked, "Can you identify the person in this video?" Mr. Howard hesitated. "No," he said. "The footage is too blurry." My stomach sank a little. But then he added, "But the figure's height, posture, and gait match Karen's. And she was the only person in the neighborhood who had a clear motive." Karen's attorney leapt up again. "Objection. He's speculating." But the damage was done. Everyone in the courtroom had seen the video. And everyone subconsciously compared the figure's movements to Karen's as she sat at the defense table. They matched. They all knew it. The HOA documents come out, then something I didn't expect happened. The prosecutor pulled out a thick folder. "These," he said, "are internal HOA emails." Karen froze. The prosecutor continued, "These emails show that Karen repeatedly targeted Mark with excessive violations. She called him a problem resident, and said she would make sure he regretted crossing her." My stomach tightened. Hearing the words out loud stung more than I thought it would. Then the prosecutor read an email she sent 2 weeks before the fire. "I'm done playing nice with him. If the board won't let me enforce the rules, I'll handle it myself." You could feel the courtroom shift. People leaned in. Whispers spread through the gallery. Her attorney objected, saying the email was being misinterpreted. "But there's only so many ways you can interpret. I'll handle it myself." Karen testifies her attorney made a risky move. They put Karen on the stand. She walked up confidently at first, chin high. But she kept fidgeting with her hands. Her voice trembled slightly when she answered the first few questions. Her lawyer began gently. "Karen, did you set fire to Mark's house?" "Absolutely not," she said, shaking her head. "Did you place a gas can behind his fence?" "No." "Did you ever go behind his home that night?" "No." Then the prosecutor stood up. And the tone shifted instantly. "Mrs. Miller," he began, "do you recall telling board members you would make sure Mark didn't stay here long?" Her jaw tightened. "I don't recall saying that." The prosecutor pulled out the email. "Is this your message?" She swallowed. "Yes. But that wasn't a threat. That was a warning." The prosecutor cut in. "No," she snapped. "Mrs. Miller, did you lie to investigators?" "No." "Did you tell them you had no gas cans at all?" "Yes." "Because I didn't." The prosecutor slowly lifted a photo. A photo of a gas can in her garage. She froze. The courtroom went still. Her face drained of color. It must have been my husband's," she stammered. "You're divorced," the prosecutor replied flatly. Her attorney tried to object, but the judge overruled. Karen's voice cracked. Her hands shook. Her eyes darted around like she was looking for escape. Every confident lie she rehearsed fell apart under pressure. And the prosecutor wasn't done. The final blow, the last piece of evidence, was a timeline reconstruction from a fire investigator. He walked through every moment leading up to 2:14 a.m. Then he said, based on the burn pattern and ignition point, the fire was started within 3 to 5 minutes of the figure appearing behind the property on the footage. Whispers filled the room again. Karen looked at her attorney with panic in her eyes. That was when she cracked. She slammed her hand on the table. "This is all twisted. He made my life miserable. The board never respected me. He embarrassed me. Mrs. Miller," the judge warned. But she kept going. "I didn't deserve this treatment. I worked so hard to keep the community in order. And he ruined everything by refusing to follow the rules." Her attorney grabbed her arm. "Karen, stop." But she shook him off. If he had just listened, none of this would have happened. The courtroom went silent. Every juror's eyes widened slightly. because in her anger, in her slip-up, she admitted the motive. Not the act, but the reason she wanted to hurt me. And sometimes, that's all a jury needs. The break in her armor. For the first time since the fire, I finally saw the truth completely. Karen wasn't a monster with a plan. She wasn't a criminal mastermind. She was a petty, power-obsessed woman who let her pride destroy her life. And she nearly destroyed mine. As she sat there shaking, eyes wild, breathing uneven, I realized something else. This wasn't the end. The final verdict was still coming. I sat in that courtroom, staring at the table where Karen used to sit. Her empty chair, almost louder than her presence ever was. For months she had tried to control my life, intimidate me, silence me, and finally destroy me. My home was gone because of her. Everything I owned. Every memory. Every single thing I built with years of work. And yet, as the judge walked in and the room rose, I realized something. This wasn't just my fight anymore. This was justice for every neighbor she bullied, every person she scared, every family she threatened with HOA rules that never even existed. The prosecutor started by laying out the timeline. I had already heard it 100 times by then, but hearing it in court still made my chest tighten. Karen's anonymous complaints. The forged violation notices she slipped under my door. Her threats during HOA meetings. Her obsession with cleaning up the neighborhood. And then, the fire. The prosecutor explained it step by step, using the evidence we collected. Accelerant traces were found near the back deck, he said. Security footage shows Ms. Dorsey leaving her home at 1:47 a.m. and returning at 2:23 a.m. The fire was reported at 2:31 a.m. The whole courtroom was silent. He clicked to the next slide. There it was, the footprint photo. Additionally, a size 7 women's shoe print was found near the gas meter. The tread matches a pair of shoes found in Ms. Dorsey's bedroom during the search. The jurors looked at each other. Even the defense attorney shifted uncomfortably. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking. Not from fear, just from the surreal exhaustion of hearing my own story presented like evidence in a documentary. Finally, the prosecutor turned toward me. "Your Honor, the state calls the victim, Mr. to the stand." I took a deep breath and stood up. When I sat down and placed my hand on the Bible, I felt every emotion come rushing up at once. Anger, grief, exhaustion, and something that almost felt like relief. I had waited so long for this. "Tell us what happened the week before the fire," the prosecutor said gently. I kept my voice steady. Short sentences. Just the truth. I received 5 violation notices in 1 week. All from the HOA. All of them false. The judge nodded. The jurors scribbled notes. "Did you confront anyone about it?" "Yes. I asked about the penalties. The HOA said they never issued the notices." That's when I realized someone inside the HOA was targeting me. "And who did you suspect?" "Karen." "Why?" I swallowed. "She told me at the last meeting, 'People like you don't belong here.'" She didn't hide her hatred. She didn't hide that she wanted me gone. The prosecutor nodded. "And what happened the night of the fire?" I felt my chest tighten just thinking about it. I was asleep. I woke up to a smell, like plastic and gasoline. Then I heard crackling. I opened my bedroom door, and the hallway was already filled with smoke. A few jurors visibly reacted. One covered her mouth. Another leaned forward. I barely made it out. If I had woken up even 2 minutes later, I wouldn't be here. "What did the firefighters tell you?" "They said the fire started outside, that there were signs of accelerants, and that someone had been seen walking away from the area." "And who did that witness identify?" I looked directly at the judge, then the jury. "Karen." A wave of emotion passed through the room. "Thank you," the prosecutor said. "No further questions." The defense attorney stood up. She looked nervous. "Mister, are you certain this was intentional? Could it not have been? It was intentional, I said firmly, cutting her off. She blinked. But you don't know for sure. I lost everything, I said quietly. You don't wake up to gasoline by accident. She opened her mouth to say something else, but stopped. There was no defense for this. Not anymore. Nothing further, she said softly. I stepped down from the witness stand and returned to my seat. My legs felt heavy, like they were filled with sand. But I also felt lighter than I had in months. I had spoken. I had been heard. After closing arguments, the judge dismissed the jury. We'll reconvene when the verdict is ready. Everyone stood to leave, but I remained seated for a moment, staring at the empty defense table. I wondered what Karen was thinking right now. I wondered if she regretted any of it. Or if she was somewhere blaming me for ruining her life, just like she had tried to ruin mine. The jurors took 3 hours. 3 hours that felt like a lifetime. I paced the hallway, sat down, stood back up, called a friend, sat again. I kept picturing my house. The charred remains. The garage that collapsed. The melted picture frames. The burnt journal I had since college. Finally, the court clerk appeared. The jury has reached a verdict. My heart thumped once, hard. I walked back into the courtroom, feeling heat rise in my chest. The judge took her seat. The jurors filed in. The foreperson stood up, holding the paper. In the case of State versus Karen Dorsey. A pause. A long one. We find the defendant. I held my breath. Guilty on all counts. It felt like the entire room exhaled at once. I closed my eyes. My shoulders dropped. My hands went numb for a moment. Everything inside me loosened, like a tight band finally snapping. Karen wasn't there to hear it, but it didn't matter. Justice didn't need her permission. The judge thanked the jury. There were some post-trial details, but honestly, I didn't hear most of it. I was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere between relief and disbelief. When the courtroom finally emptied, the prosecutor came over. "It's over," he said with a small smile. "You did it." I shook my head. "We did it." He nodded once and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You can start rebuilding now." Those words hit me harder than the verdict. Because he was right. For the first time since the fire, I wasn't surviving anymore. I was moving forward. What happened after the HOA elected a new board? They apologized. They offered to help with cleanup and recovery. Some neighbors who never even spoke to me before showed up with food, donations, and support. I rented a small place across town while everything got sorted. Insurance covered most of the damage. Friends helped me salvage what little was left. And months later, I stood in front of the new foundation where my house used to be. Fresh concrete. New beginnings. Clean ground with no smoke, no ashes, no Karen. I took a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, it didn't hurt to breathe. I wasn't the same person I was before the fire. But I was stronger, calmer, more grounded. And I knew one thing for certain. Karen tried to burn me out of my own life. But all she did was give me a reason to rebuild.